I'd like to see you play Railroader. Yeah. Good boy's gonna need a top drop on that, right? Alright. I'll be back in a moment.
Discovery, go at throttle up.
All right. I'm back. Hey, fellas, I actually, for after the launch, I actually had an idea. Fresh pots? No. I want to be careful with the coffee, dude. So you don't want to go too crazy here. I actually had an idea, dudes. I said I was gonna play Cities after Space News and the launch, but I was thinking like at that point we'll be streaming for a pretty good while, and I don't want to like play Cities for an hour, right? So what we do need to do is, or what I need to do is the 97 has a the 97 is leaking oil, and yeah, I don't know why. I have a good idea, but yeah, I was figured we could go change the oil and try to figure out where that's coming from. So we could do that. It could be the rear main. God, kind of does look like it, but drain pan gasket is what I'm kind of hoping it is. So I have a new drain plug and some Shell Rotella and a new oil filter teed up for it. The truck needed the oil. It needed the oil changed anyway, dude. Last time I changed it was in 2021, like right after Route 154. But then again, I don't drive it very much, but also probably a good idea to do anyway. And if we're trying to figure out an oil leak, probably, I mean, we got to drain the oil anyway. So, and you think solving it will take an hour? Seriously though, that'd be cool to see. It's something that I need to do, and I don't know, maybe people would be into it. I don't want to, but I don't want to, on the other hand, like, I said I'd play Cities today, but I'm trying to, I don't know, I got to take it a little bit easy today. I didn't really take into account getting sick, which is why I went with the schedule with breaks today. You know, the first early hours game, Space News, launch, because the launch, and then do some after hours. But we'll see. Did you ever drop the pan? They usually don't fail unless they're tampered with. No, Gah. So the reason why I think it's the pan, it's the drain plug gasket and not the pan gasket or the rear main is because it didn't leak oil during Route 154. Not at all. When I got the truck back to Boston in late 2021, I did an oil change on it, and I noticed cracks in the O-ring on the drain plug. And since then, it's been leaking. So just slowly, but it's really apparent when if you park it out in a gravel driveway, it's kind of hard to see it, but it's oil all over my shop floor. It's a slow leak, but yeah, well, We'll figure it out. The other thing I noticed the last time I went under there is, there were 2 bolts missing from the drain pan. So someone was monkeying around with it. That wasn't me. So last time I was down under there, I bought 2 more bolts I got more bolts for it, put those bolts in. So are you still planning on sticking a streaming rig in the 97? Vickers, I did a little while back. I streamed driving across the entire country, but yeah, I would love to do that. Repost, hey, car question. When you use those liquid gasket things where you have to make your own gasket, how do you do that? Do you just lay a bead around the edge and press it on? Yeah. JB weld? I'm not JB welding a drain pan, Clayton. I have a shop. There's no need for jank fixes like that. Which truck is that? It's the 97. Yeah. Yeah, something's weird with the going on down there. Yeah. I didn't notice it during Route 154, but it clearly wasn't a problem because it wasn't leaking oil, but I did see that the drain pan was missing 2 bolts on the back right by the rear main. So I put those bolts in the last time I changed the oil. Actually, we found that on stream. I forget what we were doing under there, but we did find it on stream. I know you did Brown Reviewer, but he also said you plan on using it to stream live launches from the Cape. Yeah, Vickers, that plan never really materialized because I ended up working for NASA Spaceflight, and there's really no need to do that because they're always going to get somebody down there on location, and I can host the stream over there if I sign up to do it, which this year I want to do more of that, but that was also before the house too. Yeah, so I still would like to do it. It would be fun to road trip in that truck, and the truck's definitely good for it, right? Like, made it across the entire country in crappy condition. I've done nothing but fix everything on it since. It should be much easier to road trip with that thing. Yeah, I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me to hear Hoonigan had the pan off to have a look at the bottom end when they were monkeying around with it. Yeah, the drain pan was missing a couple of bolts. Yeah. I don't know if they came out, Tessa, during Route 154. I didn't check. Part of the reason why I didn't notice whatever was going on with the wheel or the lug nuts or whatever in the back end of the car is because halfway through Route 154 when Ernok, me, and Scary were building the truck, I threw my back out. So I couldn't really get in and look at every single component on that thing. So, yeah. I didn't even change the oil filter because I couldn't get the damn oil filter off because of my back. So I just changed the oil in California. Yeah, but it had some crappy, like, Mobil 1 filter on it for the entirety of Route 154. But, yeah, either way, the motor's still healthy. But anyway. And just in case you haven't seen it, yeah, I noticed that it's leaking, so we got to go figure that one out. But yeah, I got a lot of the spray paint off. The truck looks really nice. Let's see, repost. Hey, car question. When you use liquid gas. Yeah, I already answered that. All right, cool. Are Mobil 1 filters bad? No, not really, Corsi. I've never had really any problems with any particular oil filter. But then again, I don't change oil that much. You know what I mean? I change oil when my car's needed, and that's about it. However, I tend to use the filter that the car was engineered for. That's just me being a little anal retentive about car maintenance, and me being a little anal retentive about car maintenance, and well, if you use the filter that it was engineered for, you know that you're not going to have any surprises. You know what I mean? So, like, the 97 came from the factory with a Motorcraft FL1A filter on it. So I replace it with FL1A filters. The Mustang came from the factory with a Motorcraft FL420S filter. So I put Motorcraft FL420S filters on it. Because that's what the car was designed for. If I'm not changing anything with the engine, why would we change the oil filter? Why would we change the type of oil filter I put on there? But then again, like once again, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. I haven't generally like had problems with other oil filters, but I know for a fact that if I put the filter on there that was designed and engineered to go on there, that you're not going to have any surprises. I've heard people say bad things about Fram Fozzie, but I've never had a problem with Frams myself. So the 59, the 97, the Mustang, and the Fusion all have Motorcraft oil filters on them. The Coronet, I think, has a PH8A Fram on it, but actually, I think I did change the oil on that thing, and I think I have a Mopar filter on there. I mean, basically, go with what was engineered for the car. You're making it more complicated by putting an aftermarket filter on the dang thing, because that wasn't engineered to go with the vehicle. You know, if you use the part that was engineered to go with it, it's going to work better. I mean, that's usually the case. There are some isolated circumstances where the aftermarket basically does the equivalent of, like, you know, in video games where the devs are like, no, we don't want to put that in, and the modding community's like, hold my beer, man. And they do anything. That kind of stuff happens with cars. There's fixes and patches for the aftermarket for certain vehicles with certain designs, right? That make them better or worse, etc., etc. Well, not worse. Worse is kind of a subjective, but you get the idea. How many Fords do you own? 4. I own 4 Fords and 1 Dodge right now. I like Fords. I don't know if you could tell. What? No Chevys? We have Chevys coming to the shop this year. But yeah, I think that's what we'll do after the rocket launch. Get out in the shop. Try to change it up a little bit because, yeah, this is what I mean about being adaptive. The schedule for the day is already roached because I was sick and I wanted to play Flight Sim today. We'll do that next week for Wings Wednesday. The Mustang was your first car, wasn't it? No. My first car was a 1991 Honda Accord, and it was a hand-me-down from my older sibling. 5 cars? How much do you pay for insurance on all of them? Oh, I don't know. They don't have like crazy insurance policies on them, dude. I'd say all told, probably like, I don't know, $1,200 a year, something like that. Maybe $1,300. Depends, you know, like deductible, etc., etc. I'd have to go look. It's not that bad. I have Rotella T. It's 15W30, so that's what I have for the 97. I think it's T4. When you do Flight Sim, if you DM me your username, I'll hop in and do some formation flying. Yep. My first car was an 02 Accord as a hand-me-down from my older sibling. It got passed to my younger brother, and now it's starting to fail. Eddie, I started with a 91 Accord, and then I bought that thing, I drove that thing into the ground, basically. And then I had, my grandmother stopped driving at the time, because she was super old, and she gave me her 93 Mercury Tracer, which is basically a Ford Escort wagon. I didn't really drive that thing around very much because it was like burgundy with a bright red interior. And yeah, I'll admit at the time I was embarrassed, which is hilarious because a car is a car is a car is a car. So I didn't drive that thing very much. And then when I turned 18, And then when I turned 18, I bought my first car, which was a 2002 Accord Coupe. Yeah, 2.3 single overhead cam VTEC, man, with a 4-speed automatic. It was the coupe though, with the triangle taillights. Those things are still cool looking. I still say those are nice looking cars. I bought that car. I co-signed it with my dad, but I paid for it. I paid for the insurance. I paid for everything. I paid that car off. I bought that in 2006. That car was paid off by like 2009. And then I drove that thing I drove that thing back and forth to Florida a bunch of times because I was in college, right? From Massachusetts. And then in May of 2013, I wanted a Ford. I wanted to buy a Mustang. So I traded the 02 Accord for a Mustang because the transmission, that that 4-speed automatic was starting to go. It was starting to slip. So I said, screw it, time for a Mustang. And I bought the Mustang, and I had that paid off probably like 2018, something like that. And I've had the Mustang ever since as my daily driver. The Mustang is a 4.6 liter V8. It's a 463 valve. It's got a 5-speed in it, so the anti-theft device, and front engine rear wheel drive car, 2-door. It's a fun car to drive. Love that thing. You're whipping around in your grandparents' 2012 Prius, but now I'm looking forward to a K car. Get a K truck, dude. K trucks are cool, man. 7.3, I use T6 15W40 fully synthetic. Yeah. For any type of pushrod thing, so that 351 in the 97 Sawyer is a hydraulic roller. Any type of hydraulic roller, a hydraulic flat tappet, you want oil with zinc in it. The zinc will protect the cam, and basically that coating of zinc basically makes it so the wear on the cam is not as, well, it mitigates it. It basically keeps you, because modern oil, they took zinc out of it because my environment, and engines fail a lot easier now because not having zinc in the oil, friction and whatnot. The hydraulic flat tappet things, and that's something that I actually learned from Vice Grip Garage. Derek, good dude. Beware, zinc in oil will kill your catalytic converter real short order. Catalytic converter. The cars that I put zinc oil in don't have those. Sam's Club sells a 55-gallon drum of T4 15W40 for like $600. Yeah, I know what Sam's Club is. Sorry, yeah. My cars don't have. My trucks don't have those. I'm feeling more like a van for road tripping, but yeah, K trucks are sick too. Yeah, there you go. Catalytic converters. My vehicles that would take Rotella with zinc don't have that. So for the newer cars, like for the Fusion, I just use the oil that Ford recommends. So I have Motorcraft, I think it's like 5W or something, 5W40. I'd have to go look. I don't remember. Whatever the manufacturer spec is, that's what I put in there. I don't need any surprises from daily drivers. That's why the Mustang is pretty much by and large stock, and I just keep up with the maintenance, and that's about it. It's some weird low weight oil. Yeah, dude, like zero weight, like 0W20 or 5W20 or something. It's something bizarre, dude. Good is not amused. I am completely emissions compliant on all my vehicles. Just saying. All right, dudes, here. So check this out. Guys, the first thing that I wanted to show you is, well, let's get into space news here. we'll card talk after the rocket launch, dude. We got space news to discuss. Let's see. Give me one moment. So last night, SpaceX had their first launch of 2024. It's quick, huh? It was a Starlink 7-9, I think. Here, let's just go through it real quick. So I did watch it. I just didn't watch it on stream because my voice was starting to go. Kate and Jesse hosted it, which is cool. Here, let's see. Let's go over to the good stuff. So yeah, this was an interesting one because it was a brand new Falcon 9 booster. That's booster 1082, I think it was.
35 seconds. All systems are go for liftoff of Falcon 9.
Yeah, the clean booster looks weird, especially with the reused fairing.
First 6 direct-to-cell satellites. Let's listen in on the final count.
Here, this is a replay, dudes. This is a replay from yesterday. We do have another Falcon 9 launching in about an hour and a half, too. What's new about it? It's just brand new, 7. It's just a new booster that was needed for the pool of boosters. My guess is that the new booster, I don't mean to be like, oh, come on, it's 7 stages, I'm positive. It's probably, SpaceX started making new first stages to join their existing fleet of stages because I'll get to the reason why in a second, actually. It has to do with after this.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here we go.
Ignition and liftoff of Falcon 9.
Yeah, exactly, Meg. They did a hosted cast, which is super interesting. So the cool thing about this launch is, it's just another Starlink launch. No, not necessarily. This one was carrying the first Starlink satellites that are Starlink direct-to-cell satellites. So, basically, these versions of Starlink satellites basically act like a cell tower. Starlink, for the internet service, right? You need the antenna, and the antenna, the antenna is what communicates with the satellites, and then it makes Wi-Fi, and you use the Wi-Fi, right? These Starlink satellites are modified. These Starlink satellites are modified satellites to be able to communicate directly with cell phones, which is actually super cool. You can get cell reception anywhere in the world. Right now, it's not necessarily a powerful cell phone connection, but having something to be able to, I don't know, if you're out in the woods and you get hurt, right, being able to call, right, and have people figure out where you are is probably something that could be useful. So this Falcon 9 launched with the first direct-to-cell satellites here. Let's get to the good part. It's enough to, it would be enough to do a voice call, Synerd, but that's about it. But SMS, like texting and calling 911 or something, yeah, you could do that. It's 7 megabytes down, I think. 7 megabytes per beam is what Elon said on Twix. So this launched out of Vandenberg last night. Here, let's get to the good stuff. Get to the fairing separation confirmed.
Fairing separation confirmed.
See? Bye-bye. How many beams? It's 7 megabytes per beam. But the beams are shared from what I understand. I don't know that much about, cell phone signals and how they work, to be honest with you. Yeah, emergency GPS location, SMS. Yeah, exactly. You're a cell phone. I'm not. You are, guy. I'm the danger. 95. I am the danger. I am not in danger. I am the danger. Such a good line. All right, cool. Here's the good part. Supersonic. Retro. So yeah, this new booster performed really, really well. Yeah. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks. Such a good speech, dude. So, yeah, there's your SSRP right there. And yeah, let's get to the good stuff. Here we go. Came right down on, of course, I Still Love You, the drone ship on the West Coast, and tink. Nice. Yeah, Havix, I don't have that information. I don't know if I don't know that much about it, dude, so I'm not going to pretend. This is the part that I know about, you know. So yeah, that was the replay from Starlink 7-9. I think it was 7-9. Let me check just to be sure. Yep, 7-9. And then the next Falcon 9 is Ovzon 3, which is in about an hour and a half. So check it out. Those are the direct-to-cell Starlinks, which pretty cool. SpaceX did give us some pictures. Remove all those before flight. Can you imagine being the guy that has to do that? It's a lot of extra stuff. But there is something I want to point out here. So after that successful mission, so this is a guy by the name of Kiko Donchev. Kiko Donchev is the VP of launching for SpaceX, and the father of Finn and Odie. Cool, man. Kiko's been at SpaceX for a long time, and him and John Edwards, another SpaceX launch operations guy on Twitter, have been posting a lot. I would assume it's in lieu of Elon giving information. If you go give them a follow, they've been posting a lot about what SpaceX is doing, etc., etc. Check this out. So #1 on the year, well done by the team in Vandenberg and Long Beach. Look at this. SpaceX is aiming for 144 launches in 2024, 12 per month. The launch system, pads, recovery, flight hardware needs to be capable of 13 a month, so we can play catch-up when planned maintenance, debacles, and weather inevitably slow us down. So, somebody was asking a little bit earlier, why a new booster? That's why. The fleet needs to be expanded. Sub 2-day launch time. So a Falcon 9 launch every 2 days. And so far, it's the third, and if tonight's launch goes, they'll be hitting that goal. Ovzon 3 is the launch that's going tonight, about an hour and a well, actually, it's not even an hour and a half. We're about an hour and 20 minutes out. Ovzon 3 is a communication satellite for the Swedish-U.S. company Ovzon. It's manufactured by Maxar on the SSL, Space Systems Loral 500 Legion class satellite chassis. The satellite will be equipped with a third-party built central onboard processor, OBP, attached to a high-performance steerable KU band dish. So it's a communication satellite. The interesting thing about Ovzon 3, guys, is that it's a 1,500 kilogram payload. That's extraordinarily light for Falcon 9's capability. Falcon 9 can move pretty much 25 tons, so 25,000 kilograms into low Earth orbit, right? But Falcon 9 isn't putting Ovzon 3 into low Earth orbit. It's putting Ovzon 3 to geostationary transfer orbit. Pretty cool, huh? Now, check this out. So this is going to be the first, I think it's an RTLS, if I'm understanding this right. This is going to be the first return to launch site, if I'm looking at this right, This is going to be the first return to launch site payload. It's an RTLS. It's going to land at LZ1 at the Cape. Yeah, because it's launching out of 40. This is the first return to launch site. So landing for a payload that's going to geostationary transfer. Because the payload is so ridiculously light, the flight envelope opens up for the first stage to be able to have the fuel to make it all the way back to land, which is cool. They've never done a GTO or geostationary transfer orbit insertion return to launch site first stage. That's never been done before, which is cool. But yeah, once again, SpaceX is able to do that because of the low mass of the satellite, right? Falcon 9, carrying the heaviest payload that it can carry, could put about, with a drone ship landing, right? You could probably do about 20 tons. If you fully expended the booster, it's probably closer to like 23,000 kilos. Last time I checked, it's probably more than that even nowadays, right? Now, if you're going to geostationary transfer, right, Falcon 9 expendable can probably do 10 tons to GTO by itself, right? If you were going to land a geostationary transfer, which most of Falcon 9 geostationary transfer orbit payloads have been a drone ship landing, right? If you're going to do that, it could probably throw 6-7 tons out there, and that would give you enough to land it out on the drone ship, right? First stage won't have the fuel because it's a much heavier satellite and you're pushing it to geostationary transfer instead of low Earth orbit, right? Because you have such a heavy satellite, the booster needs to use that fuel to push that satellite up instead of using it to turn around and land, right? So what SpaceX has done in the past is save a little bit of fuel for the booster, just enough for the entry burn and landing burn, and use more of the fuel to more of the propellants on board to push the satellite further because you need to, right? So usually what we've seen in the past with Falcon 9 is with geostationary transfers, you see them landing out on the drone ship due to the high mass of the satellite. Ovzon 3 has an extremely low mass, so the first stage could get it up to the speed that it needs to go and have a lot of fuel left over because it's not as heavy of a satellite. The satellite's 1,500 kilos. It's probably about the size of an engine block, maybe a little bit bigger. So that's cool. First time we're going to see a geostationary transfer return to launch site down at the Cape. Pretty awesome. Yeah, I should probably that's a good call. So just in some terminology in case people are wondering what the frick I'm talking about. Low Earth orbit is basically what the name implies. Low Earth orbit. Like low Earth orbit is where the ISS is. That's like about 400 kilometers that way, or about 270 miles off the surface. Like just pretend that for now, like the orbit is perfectly circular, right? So the ISS is in about a 400 kilometer circular orbit. It's 270 circular, right? That's LEO, right? So low Earth, right? Falcon 9 could put 20 tons of payload into low Earth orbit. The geostationary transfer orbit is an orbit that's not circular. It's actually elliptical, right? So it looks like an egg almost, right? And that elliptical style orbit has its highest point at geostationary altitudes. That's about 23,500 miles that way, or 32,000 kilometers. No. I got to do hang on. I got to do it off the top of my head. My brain is not mathing correctly today. 37,000 kilometers that way. My brain is not mathing correctly today. I don't know if you guys can tell. It's a little raspy today. So the highest point in the orbit is 23,500 miles, or 37,800 kilometers up. And then the lowest point in the orbit is 270 miles, or about 400 kilometers off the surface, right? So it's an egg-shaped orbit. This is a transfer orbit. So basically Falcon 9 is going to put it into this weird elliptical orbit, And then when the satellite gets out to 23, when its altitude gets up to 37,800 kilometers or 23,500 miles, the satellite will fire its thrusters and circularize in a geosynchronous orbit. So the name of the game. So okay, you know, low Earth orbit has been defined. Geostationary transfer is defined. Why does geostationary transfer take a lot more power? Well, why do you need more fuel to do something like that? I mean, the plain English way of saying it is that, well, it's 23,500 miles that way as opposed to a 270-mile orbit going that way. 23,500 miles is a long way up. But another important thing to understand is that spacecraft's and rockets' range is not necessarily measured in distance. It's actually not necessarily measured in distance at all. It's measured in acceleration. How fast can you go? The name of the game with spaceflight is speed. You go faster, you can go further. Because you need a certain speed to be able to break the gravity of whatever celestial body you're around, right? Escape velocity is what it's called. The name of the game is speed. So, in order to put something on a geostationary transfer orbit, you need to be able to accelerate to a significantly higher speed than you do to put something in low Earth orbit. Now, once again, Falcon 9 can move, 20 plus tons into low Earth orbit. If you were going to move 20 plus tons into geostationary transfer, you'd need Falcon Heavy. And even Falcon Heavy, you'd probably have to expend the center core if you were going to do something like that. Which is what made the Falcon Heavy OTV-7 mission last year such a crazy freaking mission, launching the Air Force's space shuttle thingamajigger with a Falcon Heavy. It's crazy. Right, that's crazy because the X-37 went into almost an inclined transfer orbit, which is bananas. That mission is nuts. Like, we didn't really think about it, but the Falcon Heavy just yeeted a little mini autonomous space shuttle into some type of weird transfer orbit at a weird inclination. But I digest. No, don't cough. Don't cough. All right, I'm good. So, if you need a much bigger rocket, even just to go that much further. Total delta V to get to geostationary from the ground, as opposed to like low Earth orbit from the ground. We're talking about a difference in acceleration by, probably like let me think, like 2,000 to 3,000 meters a second or something. I'd have to go look. Hold on. You gotta look at the delta V map. So geostationary transfer. Yeah, exactly. From low Earth orbit, a geostationary transfer is going to cost you 2,400 meters a second, or about 7,200 feet per second acceleration. You need to accelerate a lot to get to geo, and then geostationary circularization is another 1,500 meters a second, which is bananas. That's a lot of delta V. That's a big difference. Little bit of a thing there. So if you wanted to get something out to geo, to like full geostationary, 2,400 meters a second delta V for the transfer, and then 1,400 for the circularization, right? Gives you a total 3,900 meters a second delta V. If you want a little bit of reference here for how much extra, for the people that don't really understand delta V, how far is that? Well, it takes about 9,200 meters a second in change, or about 30,000 feet per second delta V, change in velocity, to get into low Earth orbit, right? So if it's 9,200 to get to orbit, right, and it's 3,900 to get to geo, that's basically the delta V that you need to get to geo, get out there, transfer, and circularize, right, at the right altitude, is almost half of what you need to get into space in general. That's the amount of extra delta V that we're talking about here. which, once again, it's kind of crazy that SpaceX is going to try to RTLS a booster on a transfer orbit, but Falcon 9, come on. I'm sick, guys. I woke up this morning and felt like trash. I can't believe I'm sick. I was sick 3 weeks ago. It sucks. But once again, due to the low payload mass of the Ovzon 3 satellite, Falcon 9 ends up getting more delta V. The reason why is because to define delta V of a vehicle, you have to have you need two variables here. You need your initial mass and you need your final mass, right? So to figure out how far a rocket can go, part of that is you need to figure out how much rocket is on your rocket and how much fuel is on your rocket. If you have a payload that's more mass, that's more stuff on your launch vehicle that is not fuel. The more rocket you have on your rocket, the less fuel you have on your rocket isn't going as far. Pretty straightforward stuff. Yeah, Wiz, it's really annoying. I wanted to finish 2023 strong, and I couldn't before I took a break because I felt like trash because I was sick the entire time. And now I'm like, okay, I'll just wait till 2024 and we'll seize the day, right? Woke up this morning, I'm like, you sound like Jabba the Hutt. But I'm all right. I'm good. So, yeah. So this Ovzon 3 mission that's going to happen here in about an hour is actually it's a really cool mission. Really, really crazy trajectory, and I'm really looking forward to it. Anyway, let's see. What else do we have? So that's going to happen in about an hour from now, but it's still crazy to me that SpaceX is targeting, like, check this out, dude. Like, going back to this, we're aiming for 144 launches, sub 2-day launch times, which is just absolutely absurd. What's that, Phil? Is Helios 1 the fastest? Parker Solar Probe is the fastest payload we have. Totally unrelated to the discussion, but Ovzon 3 will be the first geo satellite to use rollout solar arrays, which is pretty cool. Oh, neat. What's this W? Or Linus, what are we looking at here? USA's future of space travel. 7 hours ago. Is this a video about Ariane 6? Yeah, that's what it looks like. So, guys, like, that's cool. I'll check that out in a second. So 144 launches, sub 2-day turnaround times is, like, I've often said that Falcon 9 is basically flying on the rate that we wanted the space shuttle to, that NASA was trying to get the space shuttle to fly at. They wanted to basically have the orbiters flying pretty much every week, which is, what would that be? 50 launches and change? What is 50? It's 52 weeks, 58 weeks. My brain, I can't math today, guys. I'm sorry. 52 weeks. There you go. So that's 52 launches, right? 52 launches a year for the space shuttle. Yeah, I'm not sharp today. I'm not as sharp as I usually am. So that was like, that's what NASA's goal was with the shuttle, to launch it basically every week. Launch one of the orbiters every week. 52 launches in a year. And they were scaling to that. The best that they did in the shuttle program was 9 launches in a year. But had Challenger not happened, they would have scaled to it. The crazy thing to me about this is that 144 launches is like, if they had gotten the shuttle to launch once a week, that would have been amazing. That would have been that awesome. The space shuttle could build the ISS in 5 months instead of like 10 years. You know, towards the end of the shuttle program, they were launching it maybe 4 times a year. Maybe. So this launch cadence, guys, that SpaceX is going at is beyond the wildest dreams of even the shuttle program. It's crazy. That's like, dude, they wish they had this kind of launch goal. You know what I mean? Like, even if Challenger didn't have it, you wish you could launch the shuttle 144 times a year. That's what's crazy to me. I'm just glad you asked a question that you knew the answer to. Yeah, it's awesome. It's so freaking cool. Sheep, I wish my shuttle would launch that many times a year. Don't we all? Yeah. And that brings up, this is something else that I wanted to talk about for this space news. Guys, I know it's kind of weird, you know. You generally don't really realize that you're living through history until after it happens, but guys, nobody's ever done stuff like this. Nobody's ever done what SpaceX is doing. We're living through history right now. This is that's unbelievable. I've said in the past that SpaceX, you know, a lot of people say, like, to understand how fast SpaceX is moving and how much they're pushing the envelope, so to speak, right? You know, people say, oh, they're going as fast as the Apollo program did. Oh, they're going as fast as dude, we are well past that. I would contend to say that even 2023, which had 96 launches of a Falcon, or of between like Falcon 9, Falcon Heavy, and Starship, right? Even that, dude, Apollo wishes it went that fast. You wish you put that much payload mass into space. You freaking wish. Now, granted, you know, SpaceX is moving faster than the Apollo program, but it's easy. It's easy to say that the Apollo program, like, in a quick breath, like, oh, the Apollo program launched more. When SpaceX are going to get to the moon? Well, I mean, we are rapidly approaching that point, and I don't think we're, you know, I don't think we're really going to realize how nuts this actually is until like 10 years down the road when we look back on it and go, oh yeah, they launched every day. Yeah, SpaceX made launch coverage boring. Like, that's, you know, if everything stays the course right now, in history follows a nominal trajectory, to make a space joke. You know, if SpaceX does achieve these goals, that like this is gonna be like a 707 in terms of like aviation history or aerospace history innovations. Like, this is like a DC-3 moment, or 707. Like, the DC-3 was like the first like real widespread, widely used passenger transport. I mean, it really, Douglas is what made it. They really made their money by making C-47s during World War II. But the DC-3 is like genesis for passenger airline travel. And then, you know, after that, you know, the 707 came along in the early 60s, and then the 747 in the late 60s. Like, those are a big deal. Like, the 707 basically set the framework for how all modern subsonic airliners are built. Like, everybody uses that design. Like, low wing, underslung engines, tricycle landing gear. You know, like, everybody uses that. Anybody that makes airplanes uses that damn design, right? Plane spotters are becoming rocket spotters. Yeah, it's crazy. Isn't India trying to explore black holes or something? Sheep, you saw that Deserto post, huh? No, they launched an X-ray observatory. It was the first launch of 2024. India launched an X-ray observatory satellite, which you can use that to look at black holes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, we got a lot more on our plate. I'm just talking about SpaceX. And he said moron. That was exactly what I was feeling at the 2 IFTs, the Starship. Yep. Didn't SpaceX launch more rockets than every other nation aside from the USA combined in 2023? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's pretty bananas, dude. Like, oh, there was a view of the satellite deployment from last night. Cool. I missed this. Thanks, Thomas. Yeah. And 1082 has one flight under its belt, brand new Falcon. It looked, you guys are right, it looked very strange. It looked very strange with a new Falcon booster. Looked too clean. Right? So, guys, like, once again, people say that, oh, SpaceX is going Apollo levels of fat. No. We're well past that. We're into very uncharted territory here. Nothing like this has ever been done or even tried before. Dude, when I started streaming, and this is going to be a EJ's back in my day moment. When I started streaming, we were lucky to get 5 launches from the Cape per year. You'd be lucky. Every once in a while you maybe get an Antares launch, maybe an Atlas V, maybe a Delta IV, maybe if you were lucky, like super lucky, a Delta IV Heavy. Like, if you were lucky, right? No crewed launches from the Cape. When I started, this was 2012, 2013, this is when I started streaming. The shuttle stopped flying. You'd be lucky to get 5 per year, right? Between Vandenberg and the Cape and Boca Chica, there were 96 last year, and they're aiming for 144. No one's ever done anything like this. We are in uncharted territory in terms of rate of iteration. This has never been done before, which is pretty nuts. And, if SpaceX, hopefully, in the next couple of years, if SpaceX gets something to the moon, we can finally say, for sure that we're past Apollo levels of innovation here. This is nuts. This is on another level. Haven't needed to do it yet either, which is interesting. A clear change in industry. Yeah, well, we hope, Rocket, right? Like, there's always this thing. Like, part of the reason, fellas, why no one's ever tried this is because no one's ever needed to, right? If I think about it like this, say, in some future scenario, EJ has 3 kids, right? And, each kid wants a bicycle, right? Making 4 bicycles doesn't mean that each kid gets, 1.2 bicycles, right? That's not how that works, right? You didn't need to make something that could launch sub 2 days, right? There was no need for it. You don't need 4 bicycles for 3 kids. That makes no sense. Right? You 3 for 3, right? You launch what you launch. You launch what you need to launch, and that's about it. Right? Sat market was lucky to produce 20 spacecraft in a year. Now we make 20 a day. Exactly. Conversely, no one's ever needed to because it wasn't possible. Well, Alex, that's what I'm getting at. Let me finish next time. No, that's what I'm getting at. Part of the reason why nobody ever tried to do this before is because there was no need to do it, right? I don't think that conversely, no one's never needed it because it wasn't possible. I think it would have been possible if we had needed to do it, which, once again, it brings a question here about demand for launches, right? You rewind 10 years, right? We're talking about reuse. Well, the shuttle was reusable. That wasn't cost effective, right? The only way that would have been cost effective is if it launched every week. That would justify the development costs for the vehicle. But do you have payloads to launch once a week? Well, one could make the argument that if you make a vehicle that can launch once a week, then you're going to get payloads. The industry will scale around your capability, right? Other people say that no, they won't do that. Nobody's willing to take a risk on a vehicle that flies that much, right? Which is interesting. It's like a chicken and the egg scenario. Do you make a vehicle that can launch once a week and have the market grow around you? Or do you find a way to make demand? Do you find a way to make demand and then build the launch vehicle? Like if the demand is high, do you build the launch vehicle and then you just have that capability? The profit that you make justifies the development cost, right? In the industry, the commercial market in the industry, basically for like aerospace, basically from the end of the Cold War until probably about 5 years ago, has very cyclical demand. Well, why? The demand goes up and down, right? The reason why the demand goes up and down, or why the demand was going up and down, well, I could safely say that trend has been bucked, but I'll tell you why in a second. The demand goes up and down because of the life of a satellite. The satellite satellite life, you go back 10 years ago, like 2014, right? Satellite life usually is around the 10 to 15 years before the satellite runs, either the satellite runs out of fuel or the technology gets replaced with something better, right? So every 10 to 15 years, right, you'd get bumps in demand, right? So in the 90s, the demand started to go up for commercial satellites because of the dot-com boom, right? And when the dot-com bubble burst in the 90s, we stopped doing it. So the demand went, right? And all those satellites stayed up there, right? 10 to 15 years, right? You get into the early 2010s, that's when those satellites the demand started to get higher and higher because those satellites from the 90s in like 2011, 2012, 2013 needed to be replaced. And that's when SpaceX started to look at reusability. And because they made a very simple rocket, all the customers went to them, right? Because they made a very inexpensive rocket that was undercutting everybody else. And they used that to gain market share, right? To basically fund the reusability for Falcon 9, right? They basically rode that wave of demand that they saw was coming, right? And then by 2017, 2018, right, the demand started to waver. If you look at SpaceX's total launches over the last 10 years, 2019, you see the demand start to go down, interestingly enough. The demand 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 is going up, and then it peaks in 2018 and starts to go down. I remember talking about this for Space News in 2019, saying like, SpaceX, and this is before Starlink really came into its own, right? SpaceX needs to find a way to keep the demand to launch stuff into space higher. And SpaceX, Elon, Gwen, and the rest of the folks, the rest of the very talented personnel over there, they knew this. They knew it. Starlink is their way to do it. So they basically rode the wave of induced demand for satellite obsolescence, right? And basically when that market started to peter off, right, they started making their own stuff. So, they started making their own satellites and started launching stuff in-house. If the industry, if your customers aren't going to be able, you built a launch vehicle to be able to be partially reused, fairings, first stages, right? You built a launch vehicle to be able to partially be reused. The only way you're going to get a return on investment is if you put that vehicle to work. The more Falcon flies, the more money you recoup from developing the reuse in the first place, right? So once the industry demand started to waver, 2018, 2019, right, SpaceX knew that they needed something to keep Falcon launching all the dang time to lower the cost even more. And that's what Starlink was for. They had a unique capability that no one else could duplicate. They could handle a high launch cadence. No one else can. So you can make an internet satellite constellation as long as you could produce the satellites. You have the rocket and the payload mass to orbit is there. So, and this is what I mean about bucking that trend. So SpaceX rode the cyclical demand, right, that was happening in the space industry every 10 to 15 years. They basically rode that wave, used that to fund development, and then started making their own satellites and started making their own demand. And in this particular case, in the case of SpaceX and Starlink, the rockets are a means to an end. Starlink is the profitable venture. The rocket is just the thing that maintains the network, right? With that, SpaceX was able to basically not brave the storm and brave that, recession and demand that was going to happen, but they've been able to flatline demand because of their own induced demand for satellites, right? So doing that, now you get the second scenario that I was talking about. Do you build a vehicle, like it's chicken or the egg? Do you make a vehicle that needs to, do you build a vehicle that is required, like has a high flight cadence as a requirement for your vehicle when you go to make your rocket? Do you make something that can be reused like every day, right? Because of market demand? Or do you make a rocket, you just fork the money over, fork out the development for a rocket that can be reused every day and hope the demand comes? SpaceX did a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. They used industry demand to research reusability, and when the industry demand started to waver, they made their own demand by getting into their own satellite manufacturing. And that brings us to the point that we're at right now. The demand for launching is no longer cyclical. It doesn't go up and down, right? It's just kind of, right? It just kind of stays the same, and it's just slowly increasing, right? Which now you get to that second part, right? Do you make the vehicle, and if you have a vehicle that can launch once a week, right? Will people start making things that can launch once a week? Will the industry scale to the capability that you have? With Starlink, the industry is starting to scale to SpaceX's capability. Falcon 9 launches everything. Everything. Even like European friends. They launch their satellites too because Falcon 9 is there and it's ready and it's available and it's cheap. Right? They prop themselves up as their own customer to do a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. And that right there, once again, is why no one's ever done this. No one's ever attempted this before. No one's ever bucked that trend for, that cyclical trend of demand. SpaceX doing that and giving, through their own induced demand with Starlink and making Falcon 9 more reliable because they needed a high launch cadence because Starlink needs to turn profitability because it turns out launching rockets is an expensive business, right? Because they're basically have their own induced demand, that's giving the industry time to adapt to this capability. And eventually people will build satellites. We've already seen the changes with small sat constellations, not even just Starlink, but you have Project Kuiper, you have OneWeb, which also is going to, that's going to change. Those are going to change the game a lot. The industry is basically adapting to this availability because they know it's been around for a little while, and because SpaceX needs to maintain Starlink, that demand isn't going anywhere. You're not going to build a small, like little $2-3 million satellite, right? A little tiny guy, if you're not sure if it has a way to get into space so you can make money. But knowing that SpaceX has Falcon 9 and they need Falcon 9 to keep launching because of their own induced demand because of Starlink, right? Now you can, we'll spend some money and SpaceX will just shoot that up on a transporter mission, no problem. People are more willing to spend money around satellites that can be made to support a one launch a week launch cadence, or in SpaceX's case nowadays, like 2 or 3 a week, which is crazy. Nothing has happened like this in the industry before, which is why, once again, I'll say like what SpaceX is doing and what they aim to do in 2024 is basically a red letter day in aerospace. This is like when Boeing rolled out the 707. We went from using obnoxious propeller planes that don't really have that much range to flying like kings around the world. And, that was a game changer. Our civilization right now is built around the airplane. The U.S., Europe, we're built around the airplane. Global shipping, being able to go, like we just take a plane ticket to Europe. I can be in Europe in 6 hours. That's ridiculous. 707 helped facilitate that whole thing. It can be said that this should have been the government's job because they don't have to worry about making profit. The shuttle should have been used to prop up the industry with availability until there was demand to support commercial launch suppliers that could match it. But then we got cold feet. That was the idea with the space shuttle, Aqualex. Yeah, that was the idea. Imagine the space shuttle going up, you know, launching some Starlink satellites and then going and dropping off a module at the space station. Going to drop off people at the space station, deploy some Starlink satellites every mission. Lord knows it had the payload capacity to do it, right? $3.89 days per launch. They're going for 2-day, Rocket Guy. I have that on very, very good authority. Let me tell you. So, pretty cool, huh? I want to sit here and just kind of shine some light on this. This is ridiculous. This has never been attempted. No one's ever tried to do anything like this. That is not as crazy as trying to do the Apollo program, but it's almost as crazy. It's crazy for a different reason. NASA tried to do the opposite. To make the shuttle cost effective, they needed to replace all American launch vehicles at the time. Yeah, that's a good point. But the USAF said, nah, shuttle getaway special. Can you imagine, Phil? Imagine having a vehicle like that? Oh, wait. That's right. We're about to have something like that. Starship, man. Starship combines all the best parts of the Saturn V, all the best parts of the Space Shuttle, and all the best parts of Falcon 9 into one vehicle. Like, dudes, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. Even if Starship didn't exist, what SpaceX is doing with the Falcon rocket is already a game changer. Once Starships, if they get Starship to even do half of the stuff that they promised that it could do, it's going to be ridiculous, man. EJ passed up a Ford plug. The tri-motor? Yeah. Dream Chaser? What about it? Guys, you know what, man? You made me dwell on something. Yeah, Dream Chaser's out there, and Dream Chaser's cool. And the industry is trying to scale for, you know, the anticipated demand that's coming. That's why everybody, you know, like Vulcan is flying. And then we got, you know, Vulcan should be flying on the 8th, I believe, in 5 days, right? You know, ULA is going with Vulcan. We're seeing everybody, you know, going to new rockets. Seeing other countries pioneer, you know, try to get to their own reuse programs, et cetera, et cetera. People are being more ambitious and spending more money in the space flight sector, which is great. That's great. But I truly don't think that they are going. I don't think the industry is ready for, like, these other companies that are potentially in competition with SpaceX. I don't think they're ready for the storm that's coming. You know, NSF is online. Thank you. If Starship lives up to the hype, it's the bridge for rockets in terms of cadence and reliability. That'll be a DC-3 moment, I guess, Erudite, is what I'm trying to say. Why Starlink satellites fly so close to each other? When they deploy, Rob, SpaceX simplified the deployment system for Starlink satellites. You ever played 52 pickup? Yeah, just that's how they deploy the Starlink satellites. They take the second stage and they start spinning the second stage around and then just release them. And the reason why they did that is because in order to facilitate this launch cadence, you don't want to have to manufacture a bajillion freaking separating mechanisms. There's 60, well, there used to be 60 satellites per Starlink launch. Now it's like 20 or 30 of the Starlink V2 minis or something. Still, how do you make something that, you know, how do you make a payload attachment fitting that separates 20 satellites all at once? You want to know what they literally did? The Starlink satellites fit together on top of each other like Legos. Yep. And then they just have a clamp at the top. So they start spinning around the second stage. They let the clamps go. It's called a tensioner rod. Starlink satellites fly away. The Legos all detach. Because, once again, think about it. Sub 2-day launch, you're not getting a payload attachment fitting back every time. The second Falcon 9 second stage burns up. You get the fairings and the first stage back. So the payload attachment fitting has to be as simple as possible. SpaceX, so what their engineers figured out is basically, make Starlink satellites stackable. You could make the Starlink satellite itself the payload attachment fitting, which is super smart. Really, really smart stuff. Do they pitch, spin, or roll? Yeah, I think, Hando. Yeah. Actually, if you think about it, Falcon 9 is effectively the rocket equivalent of the trimotor. I would say, history doesn't necessarily repeat itself. So, you're comparing apples to oranges, right, Tessa? But, I would say that it's not a trimotor. I would say something like Delta 2 is the trimotor, or Titan 3. Falcon 9 is much more like a DC-3, C-47. And Starship is a 707 moment. If we had to equate one to the other, yeah, I would say that's a little bit more apt, because Delta 2 and Titan 3 pioneered lower cost access to space. Titan 2 did it because the Titan 2 ICBMs could be easily converted to launch vehicles. They have the same core stage. So instead of putting a nuke on top, you put some solid rocket boosters on the side and put an upper stage, a third stage on the top, and a payload fairing. That's how they pioneered low cost back in the day. All the money R&D for rockets went into building ICBMs. So Atlas, Titan, Thor Able. Thor was an intermediate range, right? Titan was an ICBM, and Atlas D, E, and F are all ICBMs, right? And so the Air Force block bought all those things, right? And then when we figured out that cryogenic propellants for an ICBM wasn't a good idea, because the boil off, you have to spend 30 minutes fueling the stupid thing up. And in that 30 minutes it takes to fuel the rocket, if somebody does a preemptive strike, that means the nuke is going to hit before your rocket's fully fueled, right? So that's not really good for operational readiness, right? So, solids. We switched to solids because, they switched to Titan, which is hypergolics, so the hypergolics could sit in there, but hypergolics are a little volatile, and if you breathe them, you die. So then we switched to solids, like Minutemen and Polaris, stuff like that, because solids can just sit there. They could just sit there. They don't need any maintenance. As long as you keep the humidity down, they'll sit there forever, and they'll never not work. The igniter is a spark plug. It's really easy, really, really simple, right? So, all those ex-ICBMs that have cryogenic propellants found their way into launch markets and pioneered low-cost access into space, or lower-cost access, like Atlas, Titans, and then Delta 2s. Those are the ones that were the aviation pioneers for, commercial and, anything that launches into space that's not a nuke. Anyway, let's see. Does SpaceX have the Ovzon coverage up yet? I don't think so. But yeah, I wanted to spend the space news kind of talking about that. It is absolutely ridiculous what they're doing. I don't think the industry is ready for this. What do I mean by that? I talked about the market starting to, change to build payloads that can support a higher launch cadence. I don't think so, Manny, you said something like Dream Chaser, right? Dream Chaser hasn't even launched into space. Dragon's launched into space you know, since the DM2 mission. So we had DM2, like Crew Dragon. So DM2, Crew 1, Crew 2, Crew 3, Crew 4, Crew 5, Inspiration 4, Axiom 1, Axiom 2. It's launched almost 10 times. It's launched people into space 10 times. It's close. I'm sorry. Once again, I'm not doing too well on the math today. I need another cough drop. Warning, your allotted space-time has surpassed our capability. Shut up, Marvin. So, what I'm trying to say is that, look, has anybody else reused a first stage, let alone landed one? Nope, not even close. People aren't even, other providers and other spaceflight companies aren't even like they're still scrambling to match Falcon 9's capability. By the time they figure that one out, Starship's gonna be like, okay. Blue has technically re-landed a second stage. Touche. Average development of a satellite is 24 months. Yeah, Jim, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Dream Chaser is almost the complete opposite of SpaceX. It has been a glacial development cycle. Yeah. And I don't think that it's supposed to fly more than 2 to 3 times a year. Where does something like that exist in a spaceflight economy where Starship with 100-ton payload capacity to low Earth orbit, supposedly scalable to 150, launches every week? Where does Dream Chaser exist? You're like that's like trying to, you know, hit parity with a C-47 airplane comparatively to like a 737. No way. You're not going to be able to match. Does that mean that once the 707 and the 737 came around that people don't fly C-47s around? No. There are airlines that still use them, like for landing out on unprepared surfaces. Like, I think, what is it? What's the name of the airline that uses that C-47? I forget. So yes, the market won't be there to be anything like a majority of the 144. Yeah, everyone was convinced that SpaceX would fail till... Yeah, Fuel, we saw that behavior kind of stop right around 2018, 2019, right? Like, yeah, I've been doing these space newses for a long time, dude. And I remember when we, like, proto-space news, where we'd play Kerbal, right? And I'd pause Kerbal for a second, we'd talk about the industry and stuff. People would say, I remember people in chat, I remember the edgy people with edgy kind of points of views in chat saying, like, no, reuse doesn't make sense because of the space shuttle. It's like, yeah, okay. It seems like 2018, 2019 is when people started to go, okay, maybe, yeah, all right, you know? Hey, Dak, what's going on? Yeah. Do you think SpaceX will hit their goal of 144 launches? Zizep, I will say with confidence that they'll probably exceed 100 this year, if everything goes right. Does Elon and SpaceX own methane and oxygen producing factories yet? Not to my knowledge, Roadrunner, no. But SpaceX is building out some big headquarters in Bastrop, Texas, which is just a little ways out of Austin. And SpaceX bought a lot of parcels of land, new SpaceX headquarters, etc., etc. So I wouldn't be surprised if we did see something like that, because once again, that's got to scale. You got to scale your methane production. Can I buy one of your... Can you buy one of my caps? What, my hats? Terranalist? No, they're not for sale, buddy. Their goal is 144 launches for this year, Dak. Actually, Falcon 9 is still a paper rocket. Yeah, Phil, it's ridiculous. Buffalo Airways and Desert Airways are the only ones I know that use DC-3s and C-47s. Paralite, 66-month resub. Thank you. Bran, I saw your ad time, dude. I'll run ad time before the launch. That's why I didn't do it. Paralite, Thanks for that 66, though. I do appreciate it. What a shame. He said ignore it. Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, Tyrannolyst, here's my question. What would you pay for my hat? Like, what are you talking about? You want my action, like this hat? You want this hat? Like, right? You don't want like I want a Ford cap like what EJ has. You were talking about this right here? Can I buy your Patriots merch and give you some Jets and Giants merch instead? Dude, you don't want those. Some of these hats, dude, they smell awful. Like, have you seen the Titans of CNC video about the turbo pump production? I've heard about it, Hellfish, but I've never seen it. Yeah, I guess, Sensei. I'm not sure I 100% feel comfortable with that. Like, I don't know, but I guess, everything everything has its price. Oh, that's cool. I'll check that out, Hellfish. Thank you. You're going to send me a Chevy mug? I was thinking, Nader, for April Fools, it'd be really funny to have like a Raise Hell, Praise Dale hat and get a Chevy mug instead. It just confuse people. But now that I said that, it's not going to be funny anymore. Because people will remember it. Did you watch this? I don't know what this is. Oh, yeah, Destin's video? Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, B-Money. I think the important... So, B-Money, I heard a lot... I checked around because I was curious. I watched the video, and then I started looking around at different people's points of views on this, just to kind of see how that video kind of, set in with people, right? One you actually wore. Don't worry, no weird stuff. I just like hats and want one that was actually used in labor, so no fake used style. What would I pay? It depends. 10 grand? Is that what we're talking about here? No. Alright, cool. Not gonna lie, I actually prefer Ford trucks. My chasing truck is a Ford, but I prefer Chevy cars. Not a fan of Ford cars other than the GT. Since we're doing space dudes, here's some exciting stuff from your home country. I can see the link. Yeah, Shetland. Yeah, that launch site's almost ready to go, dude. That's cool. Good stuff. There's another spaceport that's up in the Highlands too, Chiron. Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, Tara, I like my hats, that's why. Dream Chasers. Spacesuit. Cool. When launch? Let me check. 6:04, so we're about 25 minutes out. Blue has rolled the New Glenn transporter back to the factory. Fueling on Falcon 9 is underway. Yeah, and we have, from what I can tell, from what I saw from, I think Bill Harwood, Thomas said that Bill Harwood is the CBS News, Space News correspondent. He said that the probability of violation is extremely low. What's launching tonight? Ovzon 3. It's a geostationary communications satellite for a joint Swedish-U.S. company, Ovzon. It's the reason why this launch is cool, dudes, is because it's a return to launch site for a geostationary transfer, that's a really, really crazy trajectory. In my honest opinion, I think Sierra Space isn't intending to compete yet, just intending to snap up the leftovers to gain experience. I bet they don't start trying to go head-to-head until or after they have their DC-201. Yeah. To have the Hopium, it doesn't take as much of a stretch to see DC-20 disguised as an X-33 program. Yeah, that's it. That's hitting the Hopium pretty hard, man. Yeah. That's like me wanting SpaceX to use the VAB levels of Hopium. Yesterday they reported a 10% probability of violation, so the weather seems good. Cool. Just looked outside Sanford. Really cloudy, not much to see from the ground. No reason for me to head to the Cape. Yep. Vulcan Flight 1 mission profile. Yeah, I have that. I thought I had that teed up. Yeah, let's watch that before we jump back into SpaceX. So Vulcan, ULA's brand new Vulcan rocket is going to launch on January 8th, hopefully. Did you see the footage of the Chinese booster falling back to Earth? Yeah, Jack. Yeah, I'll talk about that in a second if you want. The first mission, the VC-1, Vulcan Cert 1, which is launching a lunar lander, believe it or not, the Peregrine lander, which is a NASA commercial lunar payload services lander. It's a scientific lander to land on the moon. I just want to add on a side note that the Peregrine lander is the first U.S.-built lunar lander since the Apollo program. Unmanned or manned. Pretty good. The VC-1 mission is on the 8th. So just in case, I'll simplify that. Just in case you missed it. ULA is launching their brand new Vulcan rocket on the 8th, right? And it's the first payload that's going to launch on it is the first lunar lander that the U.S. has sent to the moon since Apollo 16 or 17. Sorry, once again fuzzy today. No, I don't feel good. So if I misspeak, that's my fault. So this is their mission profile here for their first launch.
Following final confirmation of rocket and payload readiness, two GEM
I'll
63XL
tell you in a
solid
second,
rocket
B-Money.
boosters and twin BE-4 engines produce more than 1.7 million pounds of thrust to lift ULA's Vulcan rocket away from Cape Canaveral's Space Launch Complex 41. Shortly after liftoff, the rocket begins a pitchover to attain the proper flight path while minimizing the dynamic pressure it experiences during flight.
Where did this rocket launch out of? The frickin' grid? This looks like Tron.
Vulcan then reaches Mach 1, the speed of sound. With the ability to add 2, 4, or 6 solid rocket boosters, or SRBs, Vulcan can be precisely configured
Where's Clue?
to take any mission to space, from low Earth orbit to Pluto and beyond. These boosters augment the rocket's total thrust at liftoff, adding approximately 460,000 pounds of thrust per SRB. With their propellant expired approximately 90 seconds into ascent, the SRBs burn out, followed by jettison. Jettison time is variable, occurring between 100 and 150 seconds after liftoff, depending on mission requirements. Vulcan's guidance system then activates to steer towards the precise target in space. First stage flight continues as the rocket crosses the Kármán line, entering space. With the majority of propellant expended as Vulcan fights against the force of gravity, the BE-4 engines shut down, and the booster stage separates. With the rocket now weighing less than 10% of what it did at liftoff, dual RL-10C engines on ULA's Centaur upper stage ignite. Spacecraft are encapsulated inside a 5.4-meter diameter payload fairing, which provides a protective environment during ascent. Following Centaur engine ignition, the payload fairing is jettisoned. With the first burn complete, the Centaur engine shuts down for a coast phase. Centaur flies a short, medium, or long coast, which is determined by launch day. Further into flight, Centaur ignites for a second burn, powering the vehicle into a translunar injection orbit. Following the second main engine cutoff, ULA Centaur places Astrobotic's Peregrine lunar lander into a highly elliptical orbit, more than 220,000 miles above Earth, where it will intercept the Moon. Following delivery of the Peregrine spacecraft, Centaur comes alive for a third and final burn to reach a heliocentric orbit around the Sun. Centaur completes the CERT-1 mission by carrying Celestis' Memorial spaceflight payload into deep space. Known as the Enterprise flight, this mission includes 234 flight capsules containing cremated remains, DNA samples, and messages of greetings from clients worldwide on an endless journey in interplanetary space beyond the Earth-Moon system to orbit the Sun forever.
Forever. Forever. Forever. Sorry. So that's on the 8th. Lunar mission, deep space insertion. Insertion. So yeah, that's good. The Great Bambino. Ah, that's the same guy. That's talking about some lady, Baby Ruth or something. Yeah. See, if you don't show up to that, you're gonna be an L7 weenie. That wimpy deer. That's such a good movie, man. Legends never die, kid. It's one of my all-time favorite movie quotes. Remember, kid, there's heroes and there's legends. Heroes get remembered, but legends never die. Follow your heart, kid. Never go wrong. Such a good movie, man. You want me to hop that fence and pickle the beast? Yeah. Yeah, do it. The Goonies, another good one, man. Yeah. The 4th of July scene is legendary. Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. Why don't you just hop over there and get it? What? A giant mutant gorilla dog thing that already ate one kid once. Is that a fact? Didn't the launch happen earlier today? Well, yeah, super earlier today, Procy, and that was the Starlink 7-9 mission. Now we got Ovzon here. So let's tune into SpaceX over here and see what's up. I'm not seeing SpaceX's cast as live here. Yep. Yeah, the NSF coverage is up. That's right. Yeah.
The Falcon 9 is going to inject
Hey,
the satellite
Ian's
into
there.
a low Earth orbit. It's a circular orbit, about 200 to 400.
The booster is 1076.10. Landing location is LZ1. Fairing recovery is done by Bob. Payload separation at T plus 38 minutes and 36 seconds. Is he in?
Actually, so about 40 minutes after liftoff, it is going to reignite its engine in that low Earth orbit. I'll wait for Ryan to catch up a little bit here. Perfect. So we reignite the engine there. Now it's going to make the satellite go faster and make the orbit turn into a bit of an oval. So you're going to have the same perigee as low Earth orbit, so about 400 kilometers or so, but now your apogee, or the highest point in your orbit, is about 36,000 kilometers above Earth's surface. Right up there. Thank you, Ryan. So because of that, you're both touching low Earth orbit and touching geostationary orbit. So that is what
Is that what my paint drawings look like?
Between two different orbits using an O-berth maneuver. Now what'll happen, Falcon 9 will then separate that satellite. The satellite will again be in that transfer orbit where it touches low Earth orbit and touches geostationary orbit.
Right, and presumably at that point the Falcon 9 second stage does a deorbit burn and will re-enter the atmosphere, or for these missions do they leave the second stage up there?
So they usually leave them up there. This orbit is not very stable. It will decay over several months or several years depending on how low the perigee is. So what they're going to do, they're going to release the satellite, and Ryan demonstrated it there. Yeah, over time, the Earth's atmosphere, because the atmosphere doesn't have a dedicated end, it kind of keeps going into space but gets thinner and thinner. It'll slowly drag the second stage down.
Got it.
Yeah, atmospheric drag. The International Space Station actually fights atmospheric drag a lot. But anyway, so
Yes,
with
please
this,
continue.
your apogee is touching geostationary orbit. Your satellite then needs to burn its own engines over a series of burns over 3 to 4 months in this case to slowly raise its orbit up and up and up until it gets to a fully geostationary orbit. It's again, I tried to explain it the best that I could. If you want, there's some diagrams available, some animations available, or you can even just play